Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and joining me once again is Alison.
So say we all.
We are talking about Battlestar Galactica. This is Season 1, Episode 3. It's called Bastille Day. So, spoilers for the episode, as always. And this one introduces another big prominent character in that of Tom Zarek, which I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot here. But let's not bury the lead. Alison, there's something I have to ask you up front.
Sure.
Something big. Something that's more important than anything else that happens in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the child returning from the miniseries?
I did note that, and he was just in here briefly. His name was Boxy, by the way, which was a character in the original show, an annoying child character in the original show. I kind of liked it. I thought it was fun. It showed he was still alive. It showed he was kind of like the junior member of the fleet. I was okay with it. You hated it because you hate kids, right?
I didn't hate it. It was more funny to me because we said, "Oh, we don't think we ever see him again," and
we ever see him again. Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure that this might be the last time we ever see him because I didn't remember this. It's so small. It's such a two-scene little thing where he's just following Starbuck around like a puppy. That's all he is. That's the whole thing. But I laughed out loud when I saw him and went, "Holy shit! They brought the kid back. I can't believe it." Bye now. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
So that was that. But
it was cute.
Anyway, that's just this little side note. The main plot of this, of course, is we're still dealing with the crisis of last episode, which is the found water on this planet. But it's a big job. They're going to have to go down there. They're going to have to melt a bunch of ice and so on and so on. And the idea that comes up that basically Rosalie, Apollo, Adama are all kind of involved in, although Adama's not thrilled with the idea up front, is the prisoner ship. We've got all these men who are in jail cells. They could be useful. They could do something. And Rosalind's very quick to point out that they don't want them to be slaves. They want them to feel like they're making a choice. So it's voluntary, but maybe we could offer them incentives like points towards release and like a fresh start, that kind of thing. Adam is still kind of against it. And they debate like the ins and outs of it a little bit and making sure the security and like maybe like, screening out the more dangerous ones that shouldn't be back in the population, that kind of thing. But that leads to the whole setup of the episode, which is that Apollo and a couple others go to the prison ship, and we end up in a bit of a hostage standoff type situation. And more than anything else, it's a big coming out party for Tom Zarek. He even gets this big entrance where he walks out at the end of the row of cells and the camera comes tracking in. Yeah, I was like, oh shit, they know he's a big deal because they're giving him this big superstar entrance. But what did you think of the episode as a whole?
I didn't specifically remember this situation happening, but of course I remembered this character. You know why the actor's important, right?
He was on the original show, right?
Yeah, Richard Hatch is the actor's name, and he was the Apollo actor in the original show. And he actually, according to IMDb trivia, is the only actor who appeared on both shows. But yeah, that incredibly dramatic entrance was amazing, honestly, because you'd think Apollo made a reasonable appeal that it is going to be hard labor, but they were sentenced to that prison and, maybe they'll agree to help out. And Zarek just comes out and says, no, thanks. I'd rather not, we're not interested in working for you. His objections, I guess we could talk about the finite political machinations that go on, but he has strong feelings about the government. You got a sense, though, that if it wasn't this situation, he always wants to be fighting a fight, doesn't he? He, wants to be making a big deal out of something so that he has a stance to take, an argument to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that catches my eye is the fact that all the prisoners kind of wait for him to make this announcement. Like, they all don't come out there, because, Apollo just says, anyone who wants to volunteer, just, come out of your cell. They open all the doors, and no one does, and then that's the big entrance for Zarek, and it basically shows that, they're all listening to him. Like, these are all just prisoners who are all here for different reasons, but somehow he's made them all listen to him. Like, he's the leader now in here, like they're a group. But they were never a group. They're just different people. So it really got across this idea right away that he is this kind of charismatic figure who can step in front of a crowd, rile them up, And, the little bits and pieces we get from other characters of the history of him is that, 20 years ago, before he was imprisoned, he was this political activist, but it sort of turned violent. He did terrorist acts, and depending on who's speaking, they have a more positive or a more negative view on him to give it this sort of shades of grey type thing. But no, as to what you're saying, by the end of the episode, Apollo's accusing him of that very thing. He's like, oh, you just want to be in the headlines again. You want a blaze of glory because you think this is the end of your days. This isn't about actually enacting change. But Apollo ultimately kind of says, well, you know what? I'm going to make sure you don't die. And then you're going to have to actually go through with what you were proposing, is that you want elections because you don't think Rosalind should just be president by default. Fine. You can have your election. The next election was going to be in 7 months anyway. Let's do that. That's fine. And yeah, basically challenges him and says, I call you on your bullshit, so if you actually believe in all this crap you say, then stand up and prove it. And that's there's some more details to it, but that's the basic through line of what we get throughout this episode. But he's got a good presence. Like, I mean, I like the actor immediately. I think he
works,
commands the screen, all that stuff. So
he kind of gives the sense of being like a union boss as a labor leader, which is maybe more American history than British, but he's kind of, it was like, as you said, the prisoners knew he would speak for them. So it was pre-discussed, pre-arranged, whatever happened, that he would be the voice.
Yeah, and as we find out, they had a plan as well to enact once someone was on board, because they take control of the ship. They've got a guard on their side, which leads to them taking Apollo as well as Billy, Dee, and Callie as hostages. So Dee's only there because Billy is like, hey, we should, because Adam is like, oh, I want a Galactica representative during all this, and he's like, how about Dee? I mean, Petty Officer Duala. How about her? She's got skills and things. Yeah, she'd be perfect. They see right through that.
Rosalind teases him a little bit for that, though. I love that little human moment between them.
Yeah, I like that as well. Yeah, she's just calling him on his bullshit in a nice way, which is nice.
It should also be said, and I don't think we've brought this up before, but Candice McClure, the actress who plays Dee, has the most beautiful eyes. I just feel like that has to be said at some point.
Oh, sure. And then Callie's there because they also want someone there who understands all the equipment they're going to use. And Callie's part of, Tyrell's team. So she's...
The team, yeah.
So they're there. And actually, one of the things that I had definitely forgotten about was that halfway through the episode, when they're all locked in cages, there's this creepy prisoner who starts being weird with Callie. Like, obviously it's going to turn sexual, you get that vibe from it, but like it's very like, oh, you don't respect me, why aren't you looking at me? And it's taking this turn that builds over the course. I like, as it was happening, I'm like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember this. I did not remember that she actually gets shot by the end of the episode.
No, nor that she bites his ear off.
She Mike Tyson's him.
You went there. Dee, when Callie's first taken, Dee says, we're trained in resisting and countermeasures. You just didn't expect it to be exactly that. But, she is not going to meekly roll over for him. And
no.
Fortunately, that doesn't happen. I did want to go back just for a second and mention that when they're talking about this plan of using the prisoners, Apollo does point out that all these men were on this ship because they were on their way to Caprica for parole hearings.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Which implies, as Apollo says, that at least some of them are somewhat reformed. Like, maybe it's not unreasonable to say we can have them work towards their freedom. But Zarek himself is a somewhat infamous figure for his previous, political / violent action. They call him a terrorist when they see him.
This is a little detail up front. It doesn't matter too much afterwards, but just to sort of conceal his identity, not so much to us because we wouldn't know who he is, but to the characters in the show, is that because this is just a transport ship, it's not actually their prison per se. They don't have names or anything, they're just all numbers, and when he steps out, it's Billy who's like, holy shit, that's Tom Zarek. Like, it's kind of a big moment where, oh, we know who this guy is because he's kind of a big deal. So again, it builds the mystique a little bit. It kind of like sets up how much of a factor he's going to be, and I will say, just on the threat of having the hostages there, I think what's interesting, now obviously the way we've been talking about them, the fact that we remember these characters shows that I don't think anyone, if they're listening to these reviews as they're watching the show for the first time, they're never going to think, yeah, these characters are in real serious danger. But I would say that on a first viewing, I think both Callie and Dee, especially Callie, are kind of like small enough in the cast that I could have believed they might have died in this episode.
Yeah, I think that's maybe true. And the other thing is that you don't necessarily know from this that you're going to see any of these characters again, the prisoners, etc.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like, it's kind of cool they got back the actor who played Apollo on the original show. Nice one episode, one-off appearance.
Yeah, cameo, effectively, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But no, it's obviously we know he's going to keep showing up and it's going to be a more prominent role. But I think, even if this was just them testing the waters, but at the end of the episode, they have set up Apollo makes the deal that this is the prisoner ship now. Like, they have that level of freedom, but what they do in sort of trade for that is that they hand over all their weapons. So it's their ship now. All the guards have left the ship. It's just the prisoner ship. Zarek's in control of the ship, but they have no weapons. Although Adama, when he's angry about this deal that's been made, understandably says the ship itself's a weapon, which is a good point, and that's him thinking with a military mind. Like, he's thinking, oh, they can just ram into us. That's still a big deal. So I do love that at the end of the episode, though, when Apollo's telling them both what this deal was, both Rosalind and Adama are both pissed at him, at least in the moment. She calms down a bit afterwards, but like in the moment, they're both livid at the terms of that he's like made Zarek agree to, which I thought was quite good.
Apollo wasn't supposed to be negotiating. He wasn't supposed to be making deals, but that's the definition of compromise, right? All the sides are unhappy to some extent. Oh,
sure, yeah. But it also kind of does set up that he is at least a little bit like sympathetic to Zarek, and in so much as he read his book when he was in college when he wasn't supposed to. He kind of like some of the
banned book, but he read it anyway.
Yeah, he liked the challenges, how that challenges some of his beliefs, even though he's kind of Apollo's pretty steadfast in his belief of the law and what his job is and what he's protecting, and he makes that point to the other characters at the end. But it sounds like, yeah, you know what? He is right about having free elections. We should have these things and so on and so on. So I'm going to hold everyone to that. So it makes you respect Apollo a little bit more. I understand where like both Rosalind and Adama are coming from, because part of me was thinking, well, I agree in spirit that there should be a free election at some point now that we're in this new status quo, this new civilization of the fleet. I also think that maybe it's not the time for it. Like we only just we're just finding water. We've only just started this journey. Like maybe we have to like settle some of the basics first before we start thinking. And to be fair, 7 months sounds like a reasonable amount of time to get everything feeling normal, at least in this whatever the new normal is, before we start dealing with that.
They need the stability of government. Apollo points that out, but he also points out that Rosalind is effectively serving out President Adar's original term, which would expire or which would have elections in 7 months. And so that's why that period of time is chosen. Zarek, though, is claiming that the entire government is illegal and Rosalind and her cabinet must step down and they want the elections today. And, Apollo kind of talks him back from that in a way that honestly is logical. I think at some point after the prisoners are taken, Rosalind and Adama talks, and Adama says, "Aren't you going to negotiate with them?" And she says, "No, we're not going to negotiate with terrorists and hostage takers." She wants him to just send the military in because that will effectively, end the situation in her mind.
Yeah, I mean, just to one detail there, just to correct slightly, is he says talk, not negotiate, because when she says I'm not going to negotiate with a terrorist, he says, no, I didn't say negotiate, I said talk. The idea being, he just wants her to stall him a bit whilst they're getting, people prepped, and Starbuck ends up going with the team of Marines, which, Ty doesn't want to send her, but Starbuck's a good sniper shot, so she's sent in to do that. But, it makes for the excitement of the episode. I think what stuck out to me most about this episode, and I like this about it, I really like this about it, is that the Cylons themselves are not the enemy in this episode. They are not the problem. they're and maybe saying there's an enemy is maybe a bit even harsh, given that it's more of a Shades of Grey thing. But the point I'm making is that this is not another episode about the Cylons trying to kill us. The Cylon do come up, of course. There's some running plot threads that need to be addressed. We'll get to the Baltar scene and stuff.
Briefly, but relatively briefly.
But this is more about the inner machinations of this new civilization and the way that needs to be dealt with. And this prison ship's obviously a big factor of something we have to deal with. And I'm glad that the water stuff that wasn't just a magical, that's that fixed now we just don't even have to talk about it again. I'm glad that that's actually a process that's going to take a couple of episodes to actually happen, because it feels like a big thing. It feels like a big deal finding this place, going down there.
It's an ongoing plot thread.
Yeah. So I like that element of it. I like that this was like, okay, this is not about the Cylons this episode. This is about this new civilization that's formed, and actually how do we operate it. And, it's fun that once again it feels like Adama seems to think that him and Roslin are two different sides and Apollo needs to pick one. But then by the end of the episode, they're kind of in unison being angry at Apollo, and it's kind of like, all of a sudden, this is a three-sided fight, and he has to sort of contend with that. So I like that. I like that it's not like Adama wants to put it into a simple A and B, but the plot keeps proving to him that it's not that simple. There's shades of this, and also just the idea that him and Roslin actually see more eye to eye than he probably thinks they do at any given point. So, no, really liked all that stuff.
It's not so black and white, and it occurs to me as we're talking about it that this is very much like the situation we see in many zombie films or other post-apocalyptic media, where initially you have the aliens, the zombies, whoever are the threat, but eventually it's the other humans who become the antagonists, right? It's groups of humans fighting against each other for survival.
I think that's a very apt comparison, because, I mean, obviously you don't really think of it in the same way because we're in space, but this is effectively a post-apocalyptic civilization, because their planet's literally got apocalypsed. So here we are.
And it's a ragtag group of survivors, right, trying to maintain the resources that they need to keep the human population alive.
The big difference between them is that in a typical post-apocalyptic story, it's all these scatter shots of little groups and individuals, whereas this is like, no, these are all together in a town, effectively, that's floating through space. So they have to actually acknowledge each other and have some sort of diplomacy, which is what makes it so unique versus all those other stories. But I think the comparison is very apt, because it is a lot of similar ideas. So, no, that's cool. Great stuff on that front. I really like the exploration of that, and I think Zarek's going to be an interesting character to see pop up again, which is cool. We got some other characters to talk about. I think probably the biggest single scene outside of the main plot is the Baltar Adama scene.
That's awesome.
Do you know what? My favorite Baltar moment so far might be in this scene, and it's the moment where basically Six
is feeding him lines.
Yeah, Six is feeding them lines, and he's saying what she's saying. When Adam is asking, what do you need for your detector? Why are you stalling? Blah, blah. And Six just sort of is feeding him lines and saying, oh, I need this, I need that. And then she eventually starts saying what it is that he needs, but she says it in parts. So she's like, I need a nuclear warhead. And the way that he glances to the side to look at Six as he's talking to Adama made me laugh so hard. It was such a good moment, because he realizes how bad that sounds asking for it. And then it sounds a little better when he's like, well, technically it's just a petroleum, or plutonium inside that I need.
Plutonium, not.
Yeah, that's oil. That's different. There's been a lot of talk about oil in the news the last few days, all right? It's on the brain.
That's very fair. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was like, oh, okay. And he's trying to justify it, and Adama's like, oh, we've only got 5 warheads left, but fine, you'll get your 1 warhead. But that moment, though, that moment where he says it and then looks at her like, did you make me just ask for a nuclear warhead? What are you doing? He's going to be so suspicious. But then he's had enough information that he actually puts together how it's going to work, and he actually gives a convincing reason why he needs it. And he's like, oh.
The plutonium will be put into some kind of filter. We know Cylons are sensitive to radiation, other science, BS, you know. So that's his rationale. My favorite moment, though, in this scene actually was a little earlier, when Adama just basically tells him to cut the BS, and the look on both of their faces. And Baltar kind of, again, he always has this nervous stumbling over his words. It's a great performance by the actor who says, maybe I'm not the man for the job. I don't have a way of detecting Cylons. And the Six in his mind is
Oh yeah,
furious
what are
at
you
him.
doing? Yeah, she just turns and looks at him and starts questioning. What the hell are you
Yeah.
doing, Baltar? You're meant to be my little
Yeah.
bitch. Do what you're told, boy. Do what you're told.
Yeah. Yeah. And that leads to the moment we were just talking about where she's like, say this. And then, Adama says there's only 5 warheads left, but he's going to let Baltar have one if that's what it's going to take to create a real Cylon detector.
Yeah, and a nice touch at the end there is that Baltar says thank you. Six is standing in front of Adama, but then he sort of like says Commander, just to like add on at the end to make it just, even though Adama would never question it, but he makes sure he knows that he's talking to him as if there's someone else in the room, which I thought was a nice touch. So it's just one scene really that advances that plot, but it's a really good scene, and I was thoroughly entertained by it. So well done.
It is a great scene. Yeah.
New Caprica next, maybe we'll talk. I mean, it's only one little quick scene to be fair, but
It is.
we got obviously Sharon and Hilo, and she basically starts freaking out a little bit, getting scared because they see some rats and they're looking for a hospital. And he comforts her, and we cut to Six and I forget the other guy's name all the time.
Doral.
There you go, Doral. And he's like,
Doral.
He's like, she's good. And they basically just comment that she's doing a good job manipulating him, and that's kind of the gist of it. Honestly, the only thing, I mean, I think the scene's fine for like just continuing this thread of like, okay, they're bonding and she's gaining his trust and he cares about her. It's all fine. It keeps that cooking. But the one thing I had in my head though is how intact this city is, given that all the major cities were supposed to be nuked. I was like, this looks very, like, all the buildings are kind of just standing.
But the city is entirely silent and empty. It's not like there's bodies all over the place either.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it's good atmosphere-wise. Like, it's very eerie. But I also do question, like, well, I thought they were hit by nukes. I mean, maybe this is something that's addressed later, but I was questioning it a little bit as they were going around.
I'm sure you've noticed also the shot of like the 2-shot of Hilo and Sharon together was like from a low angle, and there's like a very yellowish kind of filter on it. It gives it this kind of eerie sense, or this otherworldly sense. Like it's shot very differently than the scenes in the fleet are.
Yeah, it's, I mean, part of it, I think, is actually just to hide, like, as much of, like, the surroundings as possible. Other than the wide shots where they've got, like, the cities and whatnot. But it does work, though, where it's just that if it makes them feel very close together, it makes them feel like the building around them's, like, towering over them because we're looking up at it. It does a lot of those little things. It's one of those things where, like, conserving money, because we only because if we look too wide, we'll see things we're not supposed to see, like cars go by or something, so we have to have this very narrow shot. But it works in this case because it's adding to this sort of tension the scene's going for. The fillers, I mean, it works in the context of the scene. It's a little bit of a diminished effect for me, though, just because I feel like a lot of cheap movies do this filter when they're supposed to be on another planet.
Okay.
Either the harsh yellow or the harsh blue, whatever one they like more, they'll use one of those two filters to make it look like we're on an alien world. Which, to be fair, I think this is less trying to look alien and more trying to look like, I don't know, like all the nukes did something to the air or something like that. Like it's going for like a,
Possibly, because they were saying what they're specifically doing is looking for a hospital to get more anti-radiation medication, which of course Sharon doesn't really need, but she has to make Hilo think that she's using it as well. So, they need to get more of that to keep them safe. So I think it's kind of meant to reinforce that idea.
Yes, and as we know, they have a plan. They have a plan. Yeah, and I know it's just sprinklings of other characters, like Boomer, of course, they go to the other Sharon, Tyrell's comforting her that no one suspects anything, and they do a whole sort of like fake out where Ty comes in and says, "Oh, Lieutenant, everyone knows, Lieutenant, the old man knows, I know, the whole ship knows about you and your affair with Tyrell," because obviously she's thinking, oh, he knows about the triggers, the detonators. And it's a nice little moment. I do appreciate though that he's like, yeah, we kind of let it slide because we all knew, but it's because we were shutting down. It was becoming a museum. It literally did not matter. Like protocol
It didn't
was
matter.
in the toilet, but things are different now. So again, it's just keeping that little thread going that Boomer's worried about what she did and if people will find out what she did, kind of thing. So that keeps that ticking along. Any other characters or stuff that I've not brought up that I'm forgetting?
Well, actually, yes, because that scene where Ty comes in on Boomer and Terrell talking is after he picks a fight with Starbuck at the end of that briefing earlier.
Right. Yeah, after the kids scene. Yeah.
It wasn't necessary, and he just has to find fault in something she's saying or how she's saying it. And she kind of says, I'm giving the briefing, I'm going to run it my way, and you don't always have to yell at people to get them to do what you want. She was kind of making a joke of one of the pilots, quote unquote, coming in hot, like being too fast or not being careful enough returning to the ship. And so by kind of making a joke of it, she's kind of like, okay, we're all watching, stop doing this, dumbass. And Ty is like, you're turning everything into a joke, blah, blah, blah. He's really harsh with her for no reason. It's like he just wants somebody to argue with as well, kind of like Zarek, perhaps. And she kind of sniffs him and basically says, I know you're drunk, or I know you've been drinking again.
Well, he's had what little ration of booze he's got left. We saw him sort of measure it out. He's got a little bit.
Yeah, and then because it comes back around at the end of the episode, she comes up to him and pours him a cup of something, but it's just the water, which was kind of funny. But she kind of is trying to offer a peace to him, trying to extend an olive branch and say, we got to be able to work together. We all have our flaws, and he is such an asshole. And says, yeah, but the difference is yours are professional, mine are only personal. I don't think it's that big of a difference. And I think that, well, it reminds me of a quote from Thoreau that, when you look for something wrong, you will find something wrong, even if there's no reason to.
Maybe this will sound crazy, but I actually felt like Ty had softened a little bit at the end. I know he still said it like a dick, but it felt like it was acknowledging the gesture in his own way. Does that sound crazy?
I just his response there was like he was not accepting her peace offering.
That's fair. It's the way he kind of says that'll be all, and he kind of smirks as she leaves. It felt like he kind of appreciated it, even if he's still acted like Ty about it, which baby steps, I guess. I think the earlier scene, maybe there's maybe not enough evolution here. Maybe this is the one plot line they bring up that they don't evolve enough out of everything. I did like Starbucks saying to him though that always yelling at someone's not always the way to actually get results, and because I almost felt like she was critiquing him, you always just yell at me, and I actually flourish when someone actually mentors me or gives me good advice or calls me out on my shit, but isn't just a dick for being a dick's sake, which is what Ty seems like he's being a lot of the time.
Well, remember I don't remember if I think it was in one of the miniseries, but it might have been in the first episode. He basically tells Adama if the XO isn't hated by the crew, then he's not doing his job. So he thinks that's his state of mind, is that I have to be this way because that's what's expected of me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which would make sense why he kind of seems to appreciate the gesture at the end, but still acts like a dick. He's like,
I guess so.
I'm still the XO. I'm still going to chew you out, but
still going to be a jerk.
Yeah. Off you go.
And then just at the very end of the episode, the final scene. Can we touch upon that?
Oh, sure, yeah. So Apollo comes back to see Roslyn, and Roslyn, it's bedtime. She's in her evening gown and whatnot, in her bathrobe, and she's like, no, come in, I want to talk to you. And basically she wants to confess that she's got cancer. That's kind of the point of the scene. Earlier on, she was asking to see the ship's doctor, but he's doing the rounds all over the ships, all over the fleet to check everyone out. So he's like, she's like, oh, it's not important. Just let him know I want to see him when he gets back. but
I
she,
have allergies or something.
yeah, but she confesses to Apollo at the end that she's got cancer,
Mhm.
but also does stress that this, this should be a secret, because if it gets
That's to
out,
remain a secret.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it'll seem like an unstable government if everyone's like think, oh, the leader's going to just croak at any like given moment.
Mhm.
So he
Right.
agrees to that, and it's kind of like a genuine kind of moment between them.
But he came to speak to her to say that he absolutely believes in her. He made the deal that, again, kind of reinforcing it was the best deal, and that she will have his vote in 7 months,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
prompts her to kind of admit, like, I'm not even confident I'll be here in 7 months, which, because she had just gotten the diagnosis on the day of the bombing.
Yeah, and I like that detail of like him pointing out, like, no, it's not that I don't think you should be president. I'll vote for you even, but there should be, the process should still happen. You're not just president for the next 10 years because like we're not going to do the normal things in the time being. So I appreciated that, and I appreciated kind of them sort of not reconciling. It's not like they'd fallen out necessarily, but the last time we saw them was when everyone was mad at Apollo. So it was kind of nice for them to have
It was.
a quiet, more intimate, like friendly moment together afterwards. So
Yes, and Adama had also made a comment to Apollo earlier on, or maybe in a previous episode, about you have to decide whose side you're on or something.
oh, that was this one.
And then
Yeah.
in this episode, he says, "Well, I guess you picked your side." Although it's not really clear that he's more on the government side or more on Rosalind's side than Adama's side, because it's not like he did what Rosalind wanted him to do either.
Well, I think it was to interpret what he meant by that. I think I would read it more as he said you've picked a side, but I don't think it means that he Adamus thinks that he's picked his side or Rosalind's side or even Zarek's side. I think what he's saying is that Apollo's decided what he believes in, and he's staked his claim on that side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he makes a remark about you sound like a damn lawyer or something like that.
Which is funny because I think the actor Jamie Bammer went on to play a lawyer in the UK version of Law and Order at some point.
No, he was one of the cops.
Oh, was he?
He wasn't one of the lawyers, but yeah,
fair enough.
he was.
Yeah, I never watched it. I know he was on that at some point.
I've seen some of the episodes,
but yeah,
that's a different discussion.
Not one you'll be having with me, but that is that episode of Battlestar Galactica. Let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. It does help out, and it's nice to see what people think. Just looking at, I like to glance ahead and see just the photos of the next one to see if any memories come. Because the last time when I went ahead and saw Zarek, I was like, oh, I remember this guy. He's important. Nothing's sticking out to me on these images, so we'll see. We'll see what the next one's like when we get there. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. We do appreciate it. You can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership. Thanks to everyone who already does. It does make everything possible. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?